Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to start a series going over every single team that's not in the playoffs currently. I want to go over every NHL team, a video for each team, and talk about where they're at. Where they're at in terms of identity, in terms of what's next. What's the next step they're going to take as an organization? Are they going to take a step back in the standings? Are they going to take a step forward? Are they going to continue their dominance? Are they going to continue their ineptitude? So today I want to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. They're a very exciting team, on the rise, and they're so young, and they're only going to get better. So I've got my board with me today, going over lots of things about the team. There's some things I wanted to cover with each team. I want to talk about their record this season, right? I want to talk about their record last season. So I want to see, did they progress? Did they regress? Did they kind of stay stagnant? And then I want to go and look at their, just a brief talk on their current GM and coach. And then, just to see how's that working out. Should they make a change there? Are they really strong in those positions? Then I want to look at their roster, right? I don't want to go too deep. I just want to look at their top six in terms of their forward lines, and then their top four when it comes to defense, and then their two goalies. And then I think some of the most important stuff, what I really want to talk about today when it comes to these teams, especially the Montreal Canadiens for this one. Was I want to talk about identity and next season's outlook. What is their identity? What do they kind of identify as where they're at as a team in terms of their competitive outlook? And then for next season, what do they wish to be? What do they want to be? All being realistic. So I want to give three things that I think that they need to improve in order to get to said point. If they want to improve, and I'll talk about in just a sec, but if they want to improve most possible, what three things do they need to shore up, right? All right, so let's just get straight into it. So starting off, we've got record for this season. So record this season, the Montreal Canadiens were 40 wins, 31 losses, and 11 overtime or shootout losses for 91 points. It's a huge step up from last season, where last season they got 30 wins, 36 losses, and 16 points in the shootout and overtime, all equaling 76 points. So a 15-point increase is very impressive. They took the leap. They took a leap to become, no longer rebuild status. They're not a rebuilder anymore. And I'll get to that in a second about, what's the identity for each team and what qualifies and all that. So very impressive, and it's led by these two guys. So GM Kent Hughes, I have a lot of respect for Kent Hughes and what he's been able to do with this rebuild so far. I think he did it the right way. I think he managed to keep it somewhat competitive, even though they were very down in the standings the past few years. He kept a competitive culture, and that's very hard to do. It's very hard to do to walk that balance, right? And then you bring in Martin St. Louis to be your head coach, and that, I don't know if I like Martin. I loved Martin St. Louis as a player, but I wasn't hesitant per se of what he'd be like as a coach. But it's never a sure thing just bringing in an old, really good player and making them a coach. It's not a for sure thing that they're going to be a really good coach. So, but I think his success now speaks volumes. Even before this season, I think that just the development and what he's shown that he can develop these young guys and make them into something. It's very impressive. Moving on to their actual roster, their top six, their top line of Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slavkovsky. That's a fantastic first line. Suzuki has almost, he's been in the league long enough. He's not broken out this season, but it's been his most impressive season as of yet, and I think he's only going to get better. He's a fantastic player, a phenomenal two-way game, and if I'm a Montreal fan, I'm very happy to have him as the captain. Right, Caulfield is also another player who's only going to get better. There's a reason I made the thumbnail to kind of emphasize how scary this core really is in terms of just the potential. These young guys have so much potential. Caulfield is just an unbelievable goal scorer already. He's gonna reach totals that are really gonna be turning heads very, very soon. And you got Slavkovsky, who, he's not there yet. He's not where I think some eager fans would want him to be. But I really like what I've seen out of Slavkovsky in the short time he's been in the league so far. I think he's a lot of rookies or a lot of young players, they take a while. And Slavkovsky, I think, has been above average in terms of timeline. I have no concerns about Slavkovsky there. On the second line, you've got Josh Anderson, who is definitely a presence, right? And he had a great season this year. You've got Dvorak centering that line. A defensive skill there. And then you've got the new guy, Ivan Demidov, who comes in and really just gives more than just a shot in the arm. He is part of your top six for years and years to come. And so it's looking really scary. We're going to get, once we get to the three ways I think this team can improve, we'll talk a little bit more about this lineup here. But yeah, already the top six. You've got four players there in Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, and Demidov who are going to be staples. They're going to be there for many, many years to come. So that is already just a huge thing for them. Going to the defense, the top four defense, you've got Matheson and Carrier. Matheson has been their number one defenseman for years now, but might not stay that way because their second line of Gooley and Hudson, Lane Hudson, I do think he's going to win the Calder Trophy for Best Rookie of the Year, and I think he deserves it. He's been nothing short of remarkable for a rookie, and so Hudson will eventually take that mantle from Matheson and become the number one D-man in Habs land. You go on to the goalies, and they're churning out goalies, huh? Montembeault, who is absolutely, capable of being a number one starting goalie. He's got some bad games here and there, sure, but I think Montembeault, he's a number one goalie on a team. And then Dobish, he comes in this season and really impresses. So I think he's won that backup goalie spot for now. They've definitely got some prospects, some goalie prospects who could come in and eventually, who knows, eventually take over as the number one goalie. But I like this tandem for now. So I want to go into some stats, right? So I want to go into goals for and goals against, and then also looking at the special teams. So goals for, they ranked 17th in the league this year. Middle of the pack. It could definitely be better, but I wouldn't say that it's any cause for concern. A lot of their top scoring threats are still young, and we'll get into in a sec how they could improve that. Goals against, this is where they're really lacking. 23rd, it's not good enough. I think that it comes down to team defense and strategy. I can't really point to any certain players and say that they're the reason for why this team is so poor defensively. It's not the worst in the league, but it's got to improve, right? If they're going to take another step. Moving on to power play percentage, 21st. That's also not where you want it to be. They score a power play goal 20.1% of the time. They could definitely improve there. And then penalty kill percentage, I always remember the hockey guys saying the magic number is 100 or more percent if you add up both the penalty kill percentage and the power play percentage. He's always said that, and I always thought that was super interesting. And well, they hit the magic number, right? So they're really good on the penalty kill. Actually, ninth in the league. It's very interesting because their goals against is so high, right? So I definitely think there's probably some advanced analytics that could probably point to why that disparity exists. But for 80.9% of the time, they're killing the opposing team's power play, which is pretty good. Their identity. So this is I think a core part. Excuse me. I think this is a core part of why I'm making these videos. Is where are teams? What are they? What is their next step? What are they doing next? So I want to go through the types of identities really quick. I'm going to talk about this in every single one of these videos that I make for this series, and going through each team in the NHL that's not in the playoffs currently. I want to assess who are they. So I think the cream of the crop, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, spoiler alert, you're a cup contender, right? You're a team that is top 5, maybe top 8 in the league, that you're contending for the cup. In any given year, you're going to contend for the cup. And so Montreal Canadiens, they're not there yet, right? The next tier down is squarely in the playoffs. It's a team that maybe is not contending for the cup, but you're almost when you're penciling in who you think might make the playoffs next year, you're putting them in because you're putting them in pen, because you know that they're going to make it. They're squarely in. They may not contend for the cup. They may not be that a Final Four team, in the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference, finals. They may not be there per se, but they're in, right? Then you go to the next rung down, and it's retoolers. So retoolers versus rebuilders. That's another. So it's trying to retool versus trying to rebuild. And I decided to separate these. And in my mind, how I define these, retoolers are, well, okay, let's go with rebuilders first. Rebuilders are teams that kind of tear it down to the studs. They tear it down to the studs, they get rid of everything, and they're truly trying to tank for multiple years. I'd say a 4 to 5 year window of trying to get as many assets as possible, young assets, young draft picks and young prospects, high draft picks too. It's got to be, really high picks, because they're trying to build through the draft. Whereas retoolers are something different in my mind. Retoolers are, I can define it with an example. The Washington Capitals, what they did compared to last season to this season, right? They were bad for a very temporary amount of time. They were, they got a high draft pick, and then they were able to not tear down the studs. They didn't tear down the studs. They got rid of some outgoing pieces, but then they, whether it's through trade or it's through free agency or even an offer sheet, they were able to quickly get their team back to a contending status or a playoff status. Rebuilders, I think that it depends on your organization whether you decide to retool or rebuild. I think it largely depends on your area, the place you're at. Like, I don't know if Winnipeg per se, Winnipeg, I don't know if their location and their market will allow them to rebuild, because they need all the fans they can get, and when a team goes to a rebuild, you lose some of that attendance. But rebuilding, the stats back up that if you can, as an organization, survive a rebuild, that it is, if you can do it successfully as well, it is the best way to have sustained success. It's a sustained, longevity at trying to go for the cup. Whereas a retooler team, although they may get back at it quickly, they don't have to go through that pain that a rebuild team goes through. They have much shorter window to get said cup. And then there's 2 more tiers, right, of what identity a team is. An ascender. So I've labeled it as ascender as a team that's trying to come out of a rebuild. They're not rebuilders. They're not trying to tank anymore. They're not trying to be bad. They're trying to go up, but they haven't been truly successful yet. They haven't landed themselves into squarely in the playoff status or cup contender status. So they're on the way up. They're developing their young guys. They're not trying to be bad anymore, but they haven't quite reached there, right? And the last one, this is in my opinion, the worst identity to have is no man's land. There's no real identity. There's no committing to a true path forward. We'll get to some teams who are there. And it is the worst, it's the death of an organization, or at least temporary death. Being a Chicago fan myself, I know from the Chicago Bulls, just talking about basketball for a sec, Chicago Bulls, I think, are like, no man's land. If anyone knows Chicago Bulls, it's like no man's land means that you're not truly committing to bringing as much now talent as possible, trying to go for the cup, but you're not committing to a rebuild. You're not good enough to be in the playoffs, but you're also being like, okay, well, we're just going to keep the pieces here, even though they're not good enough to take us to the promised land. So it's never a spot you want to be in. But thankfully, the Montreal Canadiens are not there. I have the Montreal Canadiens being in ascender status. No longer in the rebuild. They made the playoffs, right? And that's amazing for them. It's what a lot of rebuilding teams want to eventually get to. But I still have them in ascending status. I don't think it's a for sure thing that they'll be in the playoffs next season. No offense, Montreal fans. But it's not a for sure thing. They're going to still have to fight. Still going to have to improve, keep improving, add some pieces in the offseason. But yeah, so I still have them in ascending status. They'll get there in short order. I have no doubts about that. But so yeah, next season outlook. What do they wish to be? Realistically, they wish to be a cup-winning team, but realistically, I think their goal is to be a top 3 divisional team, a top 3 team in the Atlantic Division. If they can get there, squarely in there, they'll be very happy, because that's going to be another huge step. They're a wildcard team, and they take another step to a divisional team. So if they can get that goal achieved, for sure. Lastly, I just want to look at 3 things that I think will, how do they improve? How do they take that next step? How does a team achieve those goals that they're looking for? So one of them, I think, for the Montreal Canadiens is to potentially look into getting a new power play coach, swapping out the assistant coach that runs the power play for the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know who that is off the top of my head, but the power play percentage is 21st for them, right? It's not good enough. And so, look, maybe they could switch out some schemes. Maybe Martin St. Louis just cooks up something great. He can work with the assistant coaches better. But you may want to look into, if you're in the front office there, you may want to look into bringing someone who can better run the power play, because they're going to need to improve that. Number 2, you got to shore up goals against. And I think this comes down to schemes, and definitely comes down to Martin St. Louis' system. It comes down to systems, I think. I don't know if there's truly any people who are on the Canadiens, any players who are abysmal at defense, but would result in solely being the reason for their goals against being 23rd in the league. But they got to shore it up. It's going to be something that I think that they definitely have to focus on. Maybe the biggest focus of what they need to do for next season. But lastly, I think this is the biggest thing that you have to do in order to lead to these other two goals. You got to get a proper, legitimate second line center for this team. They continue to try and they got Dvorak, and he's not a second line center. I like Dvorak, but he's not a second line center. He's down the lineup there. They tried Kirby Dach. I love Kirby Dach, but unfortunately, I think he's proven that he can't stay healthy. And I really feel for him. I wish him the best. Truly, I do. But I don't think Kirby Dach's filling that role. And neither is Alex Newhook. They got him from the Avalanche. It's not going to work there either. I'm not confident in Newhook at all. So I think that, whether it's through free agency, they probably go through free agency route. But they've got young prospects. If they feel like they need to shore that up right now, they can make a trade and try and figure out how to fill that spot. But yeah, so that's my assessment of the Montreal Canadiens. I hope you enjoyed I'll be having I'll do the whole series, which is all the teams, and eventually when the cup winner, even once the cup has been awarded to whatever team wins it, I'll be looking at every single team in the NHL and trying to think about what's next, what's their next step, where they're at right now, and how do they move forward. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.